So let's start from the clarity. As I said, it should be super clear. No question, no ambiguity, no uncertainty in terms of the understanding of your audience. Anytime I would suggest that you err on the side of caution, make it as simple and childish as possible in terms of the language, structure, writing, graphics, than taking the risk of making it complex. I do respect different, backgrounds. I have a very complex cultural background, Persian, if you're familiar. In my culture, we have a whole centuries of hiding the message into complex phrases. When I write in English, of course, I just put it that way. I mean, the first feedback that I got from my English teachers was that actually it doesn't matter which language you write. You think complex, therefore you write complex. We need to recognize that. Nowadays, when I get a text, I can more or less guess that this text is written by a Persian student or a Dutch or a Spanish or French. And of course, German. I can easily tell the distinction between the British and American writers. So we are not native, we do understand these points, but we need to try to stick to the basic, simple clarity principles, because the rest of your effort for your reader, for your supervisors, will go to the content. So I have a few key takeaways or key points, and I think these are few suggestions, but if you ask me, for the last 10 years of writing and supervising and looking at the different theses, I would say these are potentially the most important. So the 20% of the things that you can do to gain at least 80% of the clarity. I'm doing a bit of business speech here. So first thing, tell yourself what you want to say. This is a good test. Whenever you want to write something, is it your introduction? Is it the argument? Is the proposition? Is the discussion? Is the method? Before you write it down, first, say it out loud in front of a mirror or anything to yourself. The moment that you start verbalizing, it helps you actually articulate the saying. So natural language forces us to think more clearly and in a more logical way. If I want to give a lecture to you, I should force myself to have arguments one after the other. Skipping from one point to the other point will easily pop up in the conversation, in the talking. This is a critical point, especially when you go to the critical parts of your thesis. For instance, the research question, the gap, the core explanations. Use that, it's quite effective. The second point is when you want to send something to your supervisors. When you write the first draft, I'm sure this has happened to you. After you are done, you feel, oh my God, such a brilliant writing. This is the piece of art. The world should actually, worship me because of writing that. You put it aside, you come back after a few days, you read the same text, and you say, what? Did I write this piece of, problematic thing? Then you notice a lot of problems, you notice a lot of ambiguities, grammatical, dictation, and also content issues. That's quite normal. Who is better than Ernest Hemingway in this room in writing? There is a known saying that it says, whenever I write something, I come back and cut out 2/3 of the writing. 1/3 remains. So 2/3 is just the fluffy text that needs to go away in the editing. So read at least 2-3 times the final product that you send to your supervisors, and believe me, never happened or hardly happens a thesis that is well written and doesn't get a good grade. I mean, there is a strong correlation between the quality of writing and the quality of the outcome, but trying to think and reflect on what you write, that's very important. So A few tips. If you want to get one simple message, doesn't matter in which language you write, this is the single one for the clarity of the writing. I call it the golden. The other one are silver suggestions. Short sentences, especially if you are Persian or German or some of the other respected languages. I remember when I was reading Schumpeter textbook, I started with a sentence at the beginning of one page and I finished the page and went to the second page. Still, I didn't see the end of the sentence. You can see this short sentence looks childish, but it's powerful. It avoids you from having issues in the grammar. Second, avoid complex words, complex phrases, complex grammatical structures. Simple, simple, simple writing. Avoid academic jargon. We talked about this. If you use one special academic jargon, that should be the only focus of your research. Sociomateriality, for instance. Whatever, these phrases, but that should be the only technical one. Avoid jargon. This is interesting. Avoid synonyms. Synonym is the enemy of academic writing. If I am writing a piece of thesis about change, organizational change, I shouldn't actually use synonyms. Sometimes say change, sometimes says adaptation, modification, improvement. I mean, in the spoken language, in the literature, in the sense of art, it's good to have synonyms because repetition is boring. In academic writing is exactly the opposite. Synonym means sharpness. Synonym means consistency. If I'm writing about, if my research question is the word change, then later I talk about adaptation. For your supervisors, it means that you suddenly moved from Chinese to Spanish, because these two things are two different words. Adaptation is a very specific type of change, happens in a very specific way. And then you talk about learning, you shouldn't move suddenly to change, because change and learning are very different things. If you use two different words for the same phrase, for the same meaning, you should have a very specific reason for that. Avoid synonyms. And avoid potato sentences. If you are vegetarian or you like potato, I respect that, but potato sentences mean that they don't add any content, any information, any value to the text. You can simply cross them out and still you have the same content. Just look at one example, which I took from one of the last year's thesis. It's part of the method. When the data is collected, the data will be analyzed in order to produce the findings of this research. What a big surprise. People don't know. To ultimately come to the findings, the analyzation, which doesn't exist as a word, of the data would require a number of steps that need to be taken. Come on. I mean, we know. But now we laugh. When I write many of those potato sentences. Hemingway writes those potato sentences because these are the natural thinking procedure we have in mind. And when we think and we write, of course, they come to the right. We need to go back and look at them and cut them out.